Being a chair sitter is one of the great privileges of my life. Now, I've heard people say that there are no differences between chairs and horses. Those people are idiots. I'm a transgender. I'm a polyamorous lover. I make educational content. I do debates. I publish research papers. I like to make sense of things, but making sense of chairs is a whole other matter. Even Vsauce, who could explain science to millions, was completely dumbfounded by chairs.
Do chairs exist?
And now, our culture's telling us that the differences between chairs and horses don't matter. That if you have four legs and a back, then you are a chair. How do we help our kids make sense of this when they're bombarded with conflicting messages about chairs? Forget trying to figure out chairs. The real question is, what is a chair?
Okay. So what this trans activist is doing is using a very common debating technique in regards to the trans question, the debate question, Matt Walsh's question, what is a woman? Because the point here is that, and this is actually a debating technique that I contributed to myself when I was a trans activist. I frequently employed this technique to disarm the accusation that trans activists can't define what it is to be a woman. Because when you ask a trans activist, what is a woman? They'll say, a woman is anyone who identifies as a woman. And they'll say, well, that's a bad definition. That is circular because you are using the term woman in the definition of woman. So that is clearly, on any account, an epistemic circularity. You're using the word woman to define the meaning of the word woman, which leaves you questioning, well, what is a woman? And the rejoinder by trans activists to this question is, well, giving a definition is actually really difficult because it is really hard to define what is a chair. So if you ask the question, what is a chair? And you'll say like, well, a chair is a piece of furniture with four legs and you sit on it. Well, a sofa on that definition counts as a chair. Or if you say, well, a chair is anything you sit on, well, a toilet is now a chair, or a horse is a chair, or a boulder is a chair. So the point here is that giving necessary and sufficient conditions to define the meaning of any regular word is really difficult because, and this is a classic challenge that's been well known in the philosophical literature, that it is difficult to give precise, necessary, and sufficient conditions to define what it is to mean a chair. So when gender critical feminists say that a woman is an adult human female, seems like a good definition because, it doesn't include the word woman in the definition. It uses female and human and an adult in the definition. So it's not plainly circular if you can give a definition of the term adult, human, and female. Adult is pretty easy. No real controversies about what an adult is. Human is obviously also non-controversial. Well, female, there's some debates about, well, what is a female? The sex is a spectrum, but nevertheless, it is seen to be a good definition. But people say, well, here's a counterexample: trans women. Trans women are women, but they're not included in that definition. So it's a bad definition because there's a counterexample. And this kind of illustrates the general difficulty of defining words like woman, chair, etc. So now I contributed to this argumentative style, but recently I have actually reversed my thinking on this. And I now think that the term woman is best considered as a biological category rather than a social category. And the reason why this is, I'll get into this, but I think, this sort of goes against the typical sex gender distinction. They'll say, well, sex is a biological category. So female is a biological category and woman is a gender category. And as such, it is a social category. like the term politician or widow. So, for example, a widow, the term widow only makes sense in the context of, the institution of marriage, which is a social institution. So if there wasn't the institution of marriage, then the term widow wouldn't be a thing. So widow is a social category, just like politician or whatever. And I want to admit I am borrowing some of my arguments here from Alex Burns, a philosopher, his excellent book, Trouble with Gender. So I'm going to be using some of his arguments. I want to give credit to Alex for some of these arguments. But I want to actually get into why I think woman is best seen as a biological category, because it is fits into what are called lexical universal patterns in language. So if you go to this Wikipedia page, a list of animal names. So there's a certain pattern in the language here. So there's different species here, and then there's like different words for like a trivial name, and then like the young, the word for the young, then there's the word for the female version of that species, and then a word for the male version of that species. There's a collective noun, and this is a pattern, so this is a pattern, and this pattern, you can see it goes all the way across, they're very common. So, hen versus cock, bitch versus dog, cow versus bull, queen versus tom, sow versus boar, Jill versus Jack, bull versus cow versus bull, doe versus buck, Jenny versus Jack, queen versus drone. It just goes on and on and on. Empress versus emperor. Cow or hind versus stag. Bitch versus stud. This pattern of vixen versus Reynard. Goose versus gander. Hen versus cock. I'm kind of repeating myself now, but doe versus boomer for kangaroos, leopardess versus leopard, lioness versus lion, hen versus cock. So for all these animals, there's a certain pattern. So there's a certain particular specific word used to pick out the male version of the species and the female version of the species. And you see this across cultures. You see it, it's pretty much a universal pattern across all cultures. All languages seem to have similar words to pick out the male version of the species versus the female version of the species. And there are also particular words for the young, cub versus chick, hatchling, larva, pup, baby, cub, hatchling. So we seem to have a universal need to pick out young members of the species and versus adult members of the species or mature members of the species, and also a universal need to pick out males versus females. Okay, so that begs the question, is there something like that for humans? So humans are also animals. And you would expect, based on this pattern, that the human language would also have a word to pick out the similar pattern for humans. And there actually is such a word. It is man and woman. Man and woman is the word that we use to describe the male and female versions of, the adult, the mature version of the species. Now, I actually purchased a subscription to the Oxford English Dictionary, so we can look at the English language, going back in the etymology of the English language, so that we can see that this is not arbitrary. This is a very old, centuries old linguistic pattern in the English language that picks out a lexical universal for what it means to be a woman. So a woman, the primary definition is an adult female human being. And this goes back to Old English. This is the original Old English. You can see, this. You can look at the Old English here. Going back to the year 1137. I can't read old English, but this is like, I'm just trusting that the Oxford English Dictionary, the foremost experts on the English language, they are accurate when they say that the term woman means an adult female human being. This is not some random thing made up by Posey Parker and gender criticals. This is an ancient linguistic pattern in the English language such that the word woman means an adult female human being. Okay, well, that begs the question, what is a female? Oh, let's go look at the Oxford English Dictionary entry for female. So a female is a person of the sex that can bear offspring, a woman or a girl. It is contrasted with male. Let's actually look at some quotations here. So, going back to, an individual of this sex, a female animal, a female individuals or the female sex, a female flower or plant, adjective that bears or belongs to the sex that can bear offspring, designating the sex or formally kind which can bear offspring. Like all this stuff has to do with reproduction, because the human language, like humans have just observed through our common sense observation of the world that there are animal species, there are animals that impregnate and there are animals that get pregnant. There's animals that do the bearing of children. They suckle the infant. They give birth. There's a word for that. That word is female. Now, all these, philosophical debates, what if you're born infertile? What if, you're intersex? What if you have a disorder of sexual development? What if some edge case, whatever? Or what if you have menopause or hysterectomy? That is all irrelevant. Those are edge cases. Those do not negate the general linguistic definition in regards to what it means to be female. Of the reproductive organs of an animal or plant, characteristic of the females of a species producing gametes, ova, that can develop into a new individual, usually but not always after fertilization by a male gamete. Also, designated such gametes which are usually larger and less motile than the corresponding male gametes, of or relating to a woman or a girl. Well, that just means, female. So this is not some gender critical turf conspiracy theory. That this is not bigotry. This is not transphobia. This is just how the English language has always been. So this is what it means to be female. It is about sex. It is about these sort of biological categories about man versus woman, male versus female, like those who can give birth versus those who cannot. It's about bearing offspring. That is what it means. And so this attempt to change the meaning of the term such that it is now a social category rather than a biological category, that it doesn't have to do with this general linguistic, lexically universal pattern about picking out males and females, about the types of animals that bear offspring. No, it is about bearing offspring. That is what it's all about. So, um, this is not a transphobic conspiracy theory. You know, yeah, I mean, I can't read old English, but so okay, so going back to the year 410, a female with a calf at her foot is not to be approached. So it's about a female with a calf. It is about her offspring. Female relates to offspring. Um, you know, that is what it is all about. Throughout the animal kingdom, males generally woo females rather than the reverse. So this is a biological category. It's not a social category. And this confusion that, oh, like woman is a gendered term and gender has to do with, your social role, your whether you're feminine or not. Those are social roles. Those are stereotypes. So Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex talks about how, and this is commonly misunderstood. She said that one becomes a woman. Well, what she's talking about is not that woman is a social category. It's just that it's about becoming a stereotypical woman. One is not born a stereotypical woman. One becomes a stereotypical woman because as a female, as a female woman, which is what that means, female equals woman, and that's what Simone de Beauvoir meant by that. Is a female is a woman is a female. Like the second sex is about how society projects these norms and stereotypes, these prescriptions and limitations on the social role and the stereotypes and norms associated with being female. But that is what it's about. It's about being female, which is a biological category. It is not a social category. The social categories come in from society projecting norms and prescriptions and roles upon the female body, but it is not primarily a social category itself. Now, when you say one becomes a woman, that is like one becomes a stereotypical or a normative woman, but just being female itself, being a woman itself, if you were, then this is an example that Alex Byrne gives in his book Trouble with Gender. If you were a young female, a girl, abducted by aliens and raised in a non-human society, raised in a cage in an alien spaceship somewhere, it would still be appropriate to call that person when they grow up a woman, because that is what they are. That is a reference to the fact that it is a mature female. It is a woman. It is a woman regardless of whether one becomes a stereotypical woman according to the conventions of human society. But this is why woman is a biological category. So it is not a social category. It is not about identity. It is not about feelings. It is a biological term that has been used for centuries to reference this general, lexically universal, culturally universal pattern about males versus females, which has to do with bearing bearing offspring. That is what it is all about. And you can look in the Oxford English Dictionary going back centuries that this is how it has been used. So just going back to, I was misreading that earlier. This is actually the years here. The egg contained in the female ovaries, going back to the year 1692. It's about female ovaries. Here we go. I was misreading this earlier. 1350. I can't read this, but this is how the term female is used. It's about the offspring that can bear. It is about the sex that can bear offspring. That is what it means. Okay, so this whole like, oh, what is a chair? You can't provide definition of a chair. It's not clear. It's ambiguous. There's edge cases. There's like ambiguity. That is not accurate. So yes, for common words like that, chair, whatever, yes, it might be hard to give a precise definition because chair is like a unambiguous. It is like an ambiguous human thing, but males and females, it's very sharp. It is a sharp distinction. Like we can perceive them. We can perceive them in the animal kingdom. Like there's a very clear distinction between a cow and a bull. We are not confused about edge cases about cows versus bulls. We know what a cow is. We know what a bull is. We can pick out a cow and a bull with like 99% accuracy. We can distinguish males and females with like 99% accuracy with like accuracy. We have built perceptual cognitive apparatus to very easily distinguish between males and females. We are hardwired to learn to distinguish between males and females, and this lexical universal is seen across the animal kingdom. It's seen across cultures, across languages. This is a pattern that is general. So so that is my thought on that question. So what is a woman? It is an adult human female. Okay, thanks for watching. Take care.